hydrate, or hallucinate. Eddie, I could hear Rob, my theme park manager and voice of reason, yelling even through the thick, furry walls of the donkey costume. He wasn't wrong. It was a scorcher out here, and being encased in this plush inferno was like working out in a sauna. Situated in a volcano, in the middle of the Sahara Desert, I guzzled down the water, the coolness barely registering as it went down. The inside of the costume was a humid jungle, my own personal ecosystem of sweat and regret. But hey, someone's got to do it, and that someone apparently was me, Eddie, the donkey whisperer, master of the hee-haw. I adjusted the giant donkey head, my vision limited to the two mesh-covered eye holes. The world swayed as I moved, like I was watching a shaky handheld camera footage of my life. Glamorous it was not. "Whatever you do, Eddie, don't take the head off in front of the kids, ever." Rob's voice, laced with a seriousness that could only be mustered by someone who dealt with costumed chaos on a daily basis, echoed in my ears. It's like showing them there's no Santa. Breaks the magic, you know? I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Rob took his job very seriously, and rightly so. This theme park, with its slightly worn-out attractions and cotton candy-coated dreams, was a haven for kids. And we, the employees, were the guardians of that magic. "Remember, Eddie," he'd say, his voice taking on a theatrical tone, "you're not just wearing a costume, you're wearing a responsibility. The responsibility to make every kid believe that donkeys can talk, sing, and maybe even do a mean moonwalk." Rob wasn't just talking about the park's magic. He was talking about the kind of magic that made you believe, even for a little while, that anything was possible. The kind of magic that clung to you from your childhood, like the faint scent of cotton candy and popcorn. I remembered being a kid, mesmerized by the very same donkey mascot that I now inhabited. The way it danced, the way it interacted with the children, it all felt so real, so full of life. It was a memory I cherished, a tiny spark of joy in a world that often felt too big and too complicated. And now, here I was, years later, entrusted with the responsibility of keeping that spark alive for a new generation of dreamers. It was a daunting task, sure, but one that filled me with a sense of purpose. Being a mascot wasn't exactly a walk in the park, especially when the park was teeming with overexcited children hopped up on sugar and the promise of adventure. The costume was hot, the visibility was terrible, and let's not even talk about the itch. The constant, unbearable itch that I could never, ever scratch. But then, a tiny hand would reach out, its chubby fingers brushing against mine. Or I'd hear a child's laughter, pure and unrestrained, and suddenly, the heat wouldn't seem so bad. The itch would fade into the background, replaced by a warmth that spread through me, a reminder that I was a part of something special. There were rules, of course. No talking, no breaking character, no revealing the human behind the donkey. It was all about maintaining the illusion, preserving the sanctity of the make-believe. And for the most part, I was happy to play along. Because in those moments, I wasn't just Eddie, the sweaty guy in a donkey suit. I was magic. Section 5. The case of the mischievous teen. Of course, not everyone was there for the magic. Some, like the group of teenagers loitering by the cotton candy stand, seemed to view the park as their personal playground, a place to test boundaries and challenge authority. One of them, a lanky boy with a mop of unruly hair and a mischievous glint in his eye, decided I was his next target. He sidled up to me, a smirk playing on his lips. "Hey, donkey," he drawled, his voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Bet you can't do a backflip." His friends snickered, their eyes glued to me, waiting for my reaction. I knew what they were doing. They were trying to break me, to force me out of character, to expose the man behind the curtain, but I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Instead, I did what any self-respecting donkey would do. I shook my head vigorously, my ears flopping wildly, and let out a series of emphatic hee-haws that could only be interpreted as a resounding "Nope, not gonna happen." The teenagers erupted in laughter, their plan foiled by my unwavering commitment to donkeyness. The ringleader, his ego slightly bruised but his amusement evident, gave me a mock salute. "You win this round, donkey," he mumbled before rejoining his friends. Section 6. Behind the curtain with Faye. Later that day, as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the park, I found myself backstage, the stifling heat of the donkey suit replaced by the equally stifling heat of the employees' break room. Faye, the park's resident fairy godmother and my partner in crime when it came to all things magical, was sprawled on a chair, a half-eaten box of donuts on the table beside her. Her normally impeccable fairy wings were slightly askew, and her usually cheerful face was etched with exhaustion. "Rough day?" I asked, my voice muffled by the donkey head which I had yet to remove. She let out a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 broken carousel horses. "You have no idea, Eddie," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Sticky fingers, meltdowns, and parents who think the park is their personal babysitting service. Sometimes I wonder why I do this." I nodded in sympathy, understanding the feeling all too well. The behind-the-scenes reality of a theme park was a far cry from the carefully curated fantasy presented to the guests. Section 7, the show must go on, but then, Faye continued, her voice regaining some of its usual sparkle, I see their faces, the kids, I mean. Their eyes all wide with wonder, their mouths smeared with ice cream, their laughter echoing through the park. And I remember why we do this, for them. For the magic. I smiled behind the donkey head. She was right, of course. As tiring and challenging as it could be, there was something incredibly rewarding about being a part of creating joy, about providing an escape from the everyday, about keeping the magic alive. We were more than just employees, more than just people in costumes. We were dream weavers, storytellers, keepers of the flame. And that, I realized, was a pretty amazing thing to be. Section 8, A Donkey's Purpose. As I made my way home that evening, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, I couldn't shake the feeling that Faye's words had struck a chord deep within me. I had taken this job as a way to make ends meet, a temporary gig until I figured out what I really wanted to do with my life. But somewhere along the way, something had changed. I had found a purpose in the unlikeliest of places, within the sweaty confines of a donkey costume. I had discovered the joy of bringing smiles to the faces of children, of creating moments of pure, unadulterated happiness. It wasn't about the money or the uncomfortable costume or the endless stream of hee-haws. It was about the magic that I, Eddie the Donkey Whisperer, helped to create. Section 9. Texting under the table. The next day I found myself back in the break room, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee and trying to ignore the insistent buzzing coming from my pocket. Rob was giving one of his pep talks, his voice booming through the room, and I didn't want to risk his wrath by checking my phone. "Remember, people," he was saying, his tone serious, "the park rules are in place for a reason. They ensure the safety and enjoyment of our guests. So, no exceptions, understood?" A chorus of yes, Rob's echoed through the room, a mix of genuine agreement and weary resignation. I mumbled along with the others, my hand sneaking into my pocket to silence the insistent buzzing. It was a text from Rob. "You know the rules, Eddie?" It read, a mischievous emoji winking at me from the screen. "Don't let the donkey head cramp your style." I choked back a laugh, my eyebrows shooting up in surprise. This was new. Rob, the stickler for rules, was encouraging me to break the rules? Section 10. The head comes off. Later that day, as I was making my rounds, entertaining a group of giggling children with my best donkey dance moves, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Rob, a mischievous glint in his eye and a knowing smile playing on his lips. He leaned in close, his voice barely a whisper. "You know, Eddie," he said, "sometimes the best kind of magic is the kind that's unexpected." And with a wink, he walked away, leaving me to ponder his words. I looked down at the children, their faces a mixture of awe and delight. They were completely engrossed in the moment, their belief in the magic of the park unwavering. And then I knew what I had to do. Taking a deep breath, I reached up and slowly lifted the donkey head off, revealing my face to the children for the first time. Section 11. A donkey's reward. A collective gasp swept through the small crowd. For a moment there was silence, a stunned silence that hung in the air like a soap bubble, fragile and fleeting. And then something incredible happened. The children didn't run away screaming, their belief shattered. They didn't recoil in horror at the sight of the man behind the donkey. Instead, their eyes widened, Their mouths curved into even bigger smiles, and a wave of laughter, pure and unrestrained, washed over them. It was the sound of pure joy, the sound of magic renewed. And in that moment I knew that sometimes breaking the rules could lead to the most unexpectedly wonderful outcomes. And as for Rob, well, let's just say that a certain donkey might have received a bonus in his paycheck that week. A small price to pay for a reminder that sometimes the best kind of magic is the kind that's a little bit messy, a little bit unpredictable, and a whole lot of fun.